In light of heightened geopolitical tensions, there have been murmurs of a impending second Cold War. Some have already characterized intensifying U.S.-China competition as a new Cold War. Questions remain on whether or not Russia and China are respectively waging a new Cold War against the West. Now, North Korea has added to the mix with its escalating focus on weapons development and its potential military partnership with Russia. What do we make of the security landscape as the geopolitical stage continues to shift? For further insight, we're now joined by Professor Kim Byung-joo of the Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Good morning, Professor Kim.
Good morning.
Hope you had a wonderful Chuseok holiday.
I did. Thank you very much.
All right. First and foremost, North Korea recently revised its constitution, specifying its determination to further upgrade its own nuclear weapons. It had come with a forewarning, but it finally happened. What do we make of this move?
Right. This move was made last week, Tuesday and Wednesday, at their legislature, and rewriting constitution to specify those points that you just mentioned, that North Korea possesses nuclear weapons and it will continue to pursue, advancement of it. That was a major development that concerns a lot of people. In terms of what it means, this is a very important point, but in order to fully understand its impact of it, we might want to start off with the contrast or comparison with the South Korea's case. Full democracy, rule of law. In this country, South Korea, last time we revised our constitution was 1987. And since then, there have been many different talks about how to revise constitution, update it and everything. But the thing is, we haven't been able to do so because this is such a difficult process where the public opinion has to form a consensus. Otherwise, it's very difficult. That's why, over more than 30 years, 3 decades and a half, we have had the same constitution without the revision. Authoritarian countries are different. Yesterday, I happened to be talking to a scholar who studied China's constitution. And the point that this scholar made to me was that in authoritarian countries like China and, well, of course, North Korea here, the point is the constitution is not exactly the same kind of constitution we are talking about in plural democracy, liberal democracy, countries of democracy, because fundamentally speaking, in authoritarian systems, constitutions are the means and tools of governing. So what it means is that they can revise at any time, pretty much. And so
to fit their agenda, essentially.
Right. It's not like a binding thing that we cannot change over several decades that we see here on this side of the world. And in fact, making the same point here, it was as far back as more than 10 years ago when actually North Korea first specified the idea of possession of nuclear weapons in their laws and constitution, they say. Back in 2012. This time what happened was they specified the need and commitment to continuous advancement of nuclear weapons. That was specified in the constitution this time. But the thing is, the first time the nuclear armament was mentioned in their laws and constitution was back in 2012. And since then, we know what happened. North Korea actually came out to negotiate over nuclear weapons, such as when they had to talk with Donald Trump, but even before then, different kinds of possibility of revising, their postures and so on. And, former President Moon Jae-in actually spoke about denuclearization in front of the North Korean people back, in Pyongyang 2018. And Kim Jong-un himself talked about denuclearization. And this all happened since 2012 when they first specified this idea in their laws and constitution. So we need a balanced view on this this issue that happened last week, Tuesday and Wednesday. Okay. That is number one. This is something that has happened before, and it's a little bit of a change to this. Number two is that the reason why they're doing it is they are demonstrating to the world kind of articulating to the world that they have a strong desire not to give up nuclear weapons. And then North Korea has to be accepted as a nuclear power. And from then on, what they may have in mind is arms reduction negotiation rather than denuclearization. They're not going to go to giving up all of their nuclear weapons. And possibly what they're talking about is they need to be recognized as nuclear power, and they may be interested in kind of talking about arms reduction, cutting down nuclear weapons, the existing ones, and so on. So that must be the posturing that we see in this latest move. That's what I would like to say.
Okay, with that said, of course, I think it's worth reviewing the Washington and then Seoul and Tokyo's response. Now, first, as a central stakeholder, how does Washington see the situation in terms of what North Korea is doing and what it means for its security interests?
Interesting thing in terms of Washington's perspective on this came out quite recently. That is, they I guess that was also last week. Yeah, last week, Thursday. What happened was the United States government revised their strategy against, the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. They have had this strategy in place, but for the last 9 years, they haven't had revised it because 9 years ago, and then before then, the war against terrorism, terrorist attack, terrorist weapons of mass destruction was a real big concern. But since then, it has been kind of like sideline issue. But they revised last week, published it last week, and in that strategy against the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, North Korea was specifically mentioned. And in that, this document said North Korea is now capable of using nuclear weapons at different stages of military confrontation. So what that means is in the past, a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people had assumed that North Korea's nuclear weapons use will come at the very last minute out of desperation, when they see no hope for winning military confrontation, they might just use it for self-defense or mutual destruction. So this was supposed to be the means of last resort. That has been an assumption by many, the majority of the observers so far, which kind of reduces the likelihood of nuclear weapon going off, basically. But now, the United States' new perspective is that North Korea has come up with, through the ladders of development, so much. They have made so much progress. Now they have all different kinds of nuclear weapons in their possession. So they can use small-scale nuclear weapons in the battlefield, and then they can use larger-sized strategic nuclear weapons as a deterrence cause. They have all these different choices in front of them. So meaning that the likelihood of the use of nuclear weapons by North Korea has vastly increased. So that's not exactly encouraging news. It's not a news that we can be excited about. And the point that that requires further points about how we're going to prepare and then counter them. We need better preparation for all this. That's something very obvious.
Okay, can we also revisit what has been Seoul and Tokyo's reaction since North Korea's recent provocations? What do we observe in Seoul's response, and how does it compare to Tokyo's reactions?
Oh, yeah. Seoul's reaction came out last week as soon as North Korea announced their the change to constitution. And it was something that we have had in place for quite some time. That is the message that, North Korea's use of nuclear weapons means the termination of their regime. Top leadership will be killed, and North Korea, as we know of it, will no longer, it will cease to exist. That's a very strong, but no surprise argument here. And behind that, we might ask, how is it going to happen? Well, the way South Korea's statement, the point that South Korea has repeated over the years, about terminating North Korea at the time of nuclear weapons will take place in terms of this scenario called the three-pillar strategy, where South Korea has a three-pillar strategy against North Korea's nuclear use. Three-pillar means the first part is called kill chain, and then second part is called KAMD, Korea Air Missile Defense System, and the third is KMPR, it's Korea's massive punishment and retaliation. So these three things, kill chain, KAMD, KMPR, work together. Kill chain is a system that's designed and will be operated in terms of destroying the target before North Korea's launch of nuclear weapons. When there are signs, enough evidence that North Korea is ready to use their nuclear weapons, kill chain will be activated, and kill chain will work to destroy the launching site and command post and the system related to North Korea's desire to use nuclear weapons before it happens. So kill chain is there. And then KAMD, anti-missile defense system, is once nuclear, if kill chain doesn't work, right? So it's a three-layer system. Let's say kill chain is supposed to work and somehow kill chain doesn't work, and then KAMD goes into action. KAMD it's a countering missiles that's incoming when it's launched, and it's in the airborne, and AMD, anti-missile defense system, different kinds of anti-missile systems will be fired, and then will target and then destroy the incoming missiles. So
strike down the missile. Okay.
Exactly. KMD is continuously improved, and technology development is ongoing as North Korea advances their nuclear weapons system. And KMPR, the last among the three pillar, Korea's massive punishment retaliation. This is also very important because this is a real piece of deterrence. Once nuclear weapons begins to be used, this third pillar gets into action that is designed to destroy everything that's important for North Korean regime, including the lives of the top leadership, basically. And in this stage, these massive missiles that we saw during the parade, National Defense Day, a few days ago, we saw on the Korean Seoul street, we saw huge, large kind of missiles, and they are not nuclear missiles, but they are extremely powerful conventional missiles that that has considerable payload, that's as destructive as any kind of small size nuclear weapons. So these kind of weapons will be used to destroy North Korea's top leadership. So this three-pillar system has been in place, continuously advanced, and so that is the way South Korea is dealing with the situation. That needs to be reminded to the public. I think we often forget when we repeatedly hear about North Korea's provocations. We have means to defend ourselves, and it needs to be, of course, continuously developed. So that has been overall response from this side. And then Japan, of course, repeated the same principal point about how Japan is going to be working together with alliance, United States and South Korea, to counter nuclear weapons in response to what happened last week.
Dr. Kim, to what extent do these responses from Seoul and Tokyo reflect the recent lessons from the war in Ukraine? Is that a stretch of a comparison?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important point. A lot of people, actually experts, are thinking about it, and what does this mean? Ukraine means for us, this part of the world. Number one, I guess, is that the world has realized there are disputes about this point, but there seems to be kind of limited scale warfare maybe possible involving big powers, meaning that Russia invaded Ukraine, but it has not been escalated into like a world war or European war. NATO kind of stayed out of battlefield, even though they offered a considerable scale, like arms supply and everything to support Ukraine. So this is an interesting realization, meaning that we have to be prepared for different scenarios for military confrontation. Indeed, as Russia desired, somehow, even though Russia tried to attack, Ukraine capital city and everything, somehow this welfare remained certain areas of Ukraine. And this offers a lot of choices to the aggressors, right?
Mm,
I mean,
mm, mm.
big deterrence in the past was that if you do something, this is going to escalate into a world war and everybody will get killed. That was
Right.
a real important deterrence, but no longer it holds. So everybody has to be prepared for limited scale war. That's number one lesson from Ukraine. That's very important for this part of the world.
Mm,
And then number two is the reminder for the importance of alliance. Ukraine is suffering from all these things because they were not moving quickly enough. It's not their fault. It involves a lot of different reasons involving different
mm,
actors. But they wanted to join NATO, but they couldn't.
mm,
And if they had joined NATO, they could have been a lot safer.
mm.
So alliance is important. Any country not relying fully on alliance power and then collective security can get into trouble. So
Mm.
strengthening alliance is a critical point. Those are two lessons.
Because even authoritarian countries like North Korea or even Russia, for example, they wouldn't want to go out in a full-out war. I mean, that seems to be clear. They
Mm-hmm.
measure what will be their losses. They want to cut their losses too,
Mm-hmm.
it seems. So those alliances, as you've said, are heightened perhaps even further. Our final question of the day, Dr. Kim, putting together all that's been said today and all these recent posturing of the key players, what do you see ahead in the security landscape of this part of the world?
I think one critical point is the reminder that relating to the point that we just talked about, critical point to be reminded is that alliance diplomacy is very important,
Mm,
and you don't want to stand alone there, and you have to really reach out to other powers to form cooperation and everything, to defend yourself. I think that's really important point that has been reminded to us. In that sense, South Korea has strengthened its alliance with the United States and Japan recently at Camp David, but
mm,
now there are calls being made by experts saying South Korea has to reach out to India
mm,
together with Japan. Think about cooperation system where India, Japan, Korea working together. What that means is that these people talking about this kind of new cooperation have in mind China, because China at this point is showing quite a mixed signal. China looks like it's with Russia and North Korea, but some other people see it's not really. Kim
mm,
Jong-un and Putin met together, but Xi Jinping's stance is not that clear.
mm,
What's clear is North Korea wants to create a situation for a new Cold War where a line is clearly drawn, and then on their side, on North Korea's side, there will be clear support from Beijing, clear support from Moscow. That's what North Korea has in mind. But the thing is, Beijing seems to be busy calculating all these things, and Beijing has not fully kind of set up its stance at this
mm.
point, because it looks like China is working on improving relations with the United States at the same time, trying to keep Russia and North Korea on its side. So this is a very dynamic process. In that, the way South Korea maximizes its interest is bring in new important players into the landscape, such as India.
Mm.
Japan and United States have come in fully, and the cooperation system with those two powers have been strengthened. Now, let's add more. That's the idea. And
Okay.
India should be brought in as another important superpower. So this is very ongoing and dynamic process we are talking about.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Kim, for your insights. We appreciate it. We'll speak to you again next week.
Thank you very much.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.